what I have on my dancing fingers are called feyde rings. Fede comes from the Italian mane and fede, which means hands clasped in trust. These were actually contractual agreements, or used to seal contractual agreements rather, from the ancient Roman period onward. Let me show you how these work, and then I'll get into the history of them. As you can see from this example, this is 3 different hoops, all made of gold, that are riveted together in the back, that have 2 hands on each side and 2 hearts in the center. When this ring closes, it is 2 hands clasped over 2 hearts. This is a more modern example of a feyde ring, and again it is 3 different hoops, this one made in silver, 1 rivet in the back, with again 2 hands clasped over 1 heart. This is really interesting because there is a posy ring from the Middle Ages that on the inside of the posy ring says, 2 hands, 1 heart, till death us do part. Posy rings were just little poems that were written on the inside of wedding bands. Now this ring, when you close it, you can very clearly see that it is 2 right hands which are shaking. This is a gentleman's cuff, signifying the gentleman's hand, and this is a more frilly feminine cuff, signifying the woman's hand. So you can see that these were definitely given as marriage and betrothal gifts all throughout history. This one is only 2 bands. So when you take it apart, you only see the 2 hoops, again, 1 rivet in the center, and when you clasp this one, this comes together with 2 clasped right hands. There is no delineation between a male and female cuff, but the engraving is gorgeous. But the interesting thing about this is that you still have 2 bands that are clasping together and 2 hands. So it's clearly signifying 1 band and 1 hand for him and 1 band and one hand for her. All of the information that I'm giving you tonight is coming from Diana Scarisbrick's book, Rings, Jewelry of Power, Love, and Loyalty. This book talks about how, since it was customary to exchange rings to mark the agreement of a business contract, a ring called the annulus pronobis was given as a pledge of engagement to marriage, though, unlike wedding rings of later periods, it did not signify that the union was binding. It also goes on to say that called feyde rings by the 19th century collectors, these rings with clasped hands are also thought to be connected with marriage. Now it's interesting that they did not become feyde rings until the 19th century. So these rings have a long history that goes back way farther than what we even know. There are rings that are also associated with these rings that are even more ancient than the ones that these derive from. This is the same book, and there are 2 feyde style rings on page 66. The top one is more like the rings that we generally see today, with 2 clasped hands in the front. But the one on the bottom is from the 14th century, 100 years past this one from the 13th century, and this one, as you can see, has the hands clasped in the back of the ring. But in the text, it talks about how these feyde rings were re-emerging in the Middle Ages, and then they were popular for 600 years. And as you can see from my hands, I have 3 of them. 1 from the Victorian period on my ring finger, 1 from the early 20th century, and this one, which is also from the early 20th century. So these rings were popular for a very long time, and why wouldn't they be? They're gorgeous. Who doesn't want one, right? If you found this video informative, please hit subscribe and ring that bell so that you can get notifications every time I release a video with more awesome jewelry goodness.